Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. I may be making two today because I forgot one yesterday, apologies on that one. But today we shall talk about demographics and their assimilation. See, when it comes to assimilation, the goal is to bring them into a larger fold. It's basically to convert a people to the larger group. Now, a lot of people don't like it because it means destroying some level of uniqueness. However, I have no problem with it because I accept its necessity in larger scales. That's simply reality. We need some assimilation. For example, let's take two groups, Group A and Group B. If one believes that murder is wrong, and another believes that, how should I frame this? Vengeance killing is acceptable, which is a thing. Then these groups cannot fully coexist. The two may agree, for example, that just killing a person is wrong, but these guys are willing to kill someone in return for something. Take the Vikings. If you committed a crime, they would kill you for it. But more than that, if you committed an offense against someone, vengeance on that person, including their death, was somewhat acceptable. It did have its limits, though. That's part of why I believe Leif Erikson's family got sent up to where they did. But here's the thing. I bring this up because these two groups cannot coexist easily. See, a society is built off of agreement, cooperation. When two groups living in the same territory have different ideals, beliefs, whatever, then naturally they're going to clash. Because people are tribalistic. So, some amount of assimilation is necessary in order to preserve both culture and societal structure and stability. Take the US as an example of lighter assimilation. Now, I'm mainly referring to the Europeans here because what we did to the natives was not exactly light. In fact, I'd call shooting people for being a different skin color the opposite. But think about it in the terms of an American. You have English settlers, German, Dutch, and some French as well, in the first few. Those are the first main settlers. New Amsterdam, of course. You got the Germans in Pennsylvania. You got the English spread throughout New England and down south. The French. And, of course, the Scots-Irish. Others call them Ulster-Irish. Same thing. Basically, think of them as more anglicized Celts. These were the first main groups in the United States. Now, eventually, as time goes on and expansion occurs, you see Spaniards, Irish, Italians, Russians, and some more. Poles, Portuguese, Greek, etc. All these different groups eventually became American in the broader sense because they didn't have to drop everything to be considered American. You just had to learn English, adopt a few customs, not be a piece of garbage to everyone, and accept some level of republicanism as accept all parts of your government, and you're pretty good to go. And that's what allowed these groups to cooperate together, despite the fact that the English, especially, heavily dominated. The English and the Scots-Irish dominated culturally in the US for basically their entire existence. Even now, there's very much still a dominance of these two. Now, the Germans definitely had some influence, and of course the Dutch. Martin van Buren, for example, was of Dutch descent. But these two held the most weight because that's what the majority of the culture was for the longest time. But these guys weren't just shot. Sure, there's discrimination. The Irish can especially speak on it. But there was discrimination against pretty much everyone here at some point or another. Even the English faced their own discrimination from the Irish because the Irish, well, are Irish. See, some of these people had rivalries with each other. I don't think I need to explain why. But that's the basics of it. Assimilation brought stability because, sure, you may be Irish and that neighbor of yours may be Dutch and some other dude's Polish and you all live in the same neighborhood, but you all speak English. You all watch football or enjoy some other shared sport. Maybe you watch baseball, who knows? Maybe if it's later on, you have the radio early on. Maybe you'd catch the same train to work. But still, even though, despite you being different in origin, there are some connecting lines. That is assimilation in its most basic. It is the bringing of someone into the fold. So, for example, if you can imagine, 100 English people are standing in an area. A Polish person walks up. To bring that Polish person into the fold requires adopting to the culture, or at least partially the culture, of those English people. Because, you're joining in their area. They are currently occupying the space. That is essentially the importance of it. In fact, one of the biggest problems we see with multiculturalism is this refusal to assimilate. People do not take kindly to being different than each other. That much is true, and it's something we've observed time and time again. But also, if you don't drop some of the aspects of your culture at the door, historical rivalries persist. For example, take Arab and Hebrew descendants in the US. There is still some rivalry there given the whole Israel-Palestine conflict. Similar to the Irish and the English, given their shared histories of basically constantly fighting each other. And so, since they don't drop it at the door because they refuse to assimilate, what ends up usually happening? Well, the Arabs treat it personally, and so do the Hebrews, and what you get is simple. A bunch of people who don't want to cooperate. And when they don't want to cooperate, there goes trust. Not trust, there goes just stability. And thus, because everyone's holding on to every single aspect of their old culture, refusing to assimilate, well, if no one's in the fold, the entire structure starts crumbling. There needs to be some level of assimilation. But here's the thing. When it comes to demographics, that's the subject here, all of these people can still assimilate and become American. It doesn't matter where you come from, you can still become American. Because it's a pan-nationalist entity. There's a good argument to call America an empire just on the basis of different cultures existing in one territory, because there's a real difference. Anyone who's been to different parts of the US can really see it, especially going from the rural areas. You can definitely tell a difference between being in the north and the south. Apologies for pausing. My roommate came in and I don't want to mess with them, so yeah. But back to my point. You can definitely tell a difference between different groups within the United States, but they still largely hold true to similar values, at least some similar values. As a result, there's greater stability. However, refusal to assimilate takes that away. And thus, something is needed. Some unifying factor. Assimilation is just an efficient way to do this. And thus, you must break tribal associations. See, a lot of ethno-nationalism, especially from other groups, comes from tribalism. This is my group, my tribe, so to speak, and so I will protect them. And since people are naturally tribalistic, that is a common practice. Assimilation reduces this by breaking the tribe into bits, especially if you're individualistic, which makes it easier to break people into little segments, and then bring them one by one, if necessary, into the fold. You do not say our cultures are equivalent. That is the number one. Our cultures are just our cultures. And so, when you start assimilating, you don't take away everything that makes them unique. You just say, all right, you drop a few things at the door since you want to join us, and in exchange, we will give you the ability to enjoy your life freely with the rest of your beliefs, so long as you adopt a few of ours. Deal? That is the basis of a true melting pot. Melting pot does not mean salad. There is still a unifying force. Think about cooking a stew in a pot. That is your melting pot, so to speak. When you're cooking stew in a pot, there's still something that binds everything together, a similar taste. The broth. You're not dealing with a salad where every individual piece can be separated out and you can enjoy them on their own. No, a melting pot has the connection, but at the same time, there's still unique bits, like the taste of beef, carrots, potatoes, celery, whatever you put in there. That is what we're looking for. And so, in order to achieve that, you need some assimilation. And to get assimilation, you need to break tribal associations. In other words, this must go. This is enemy number one. If people start thinking in terms of collective groups, what happens? They cling to it desperately, regardless of if it's good for them. And so, they will continue refusing to assimilate. The melting pot will not be formed, and instead, people will grow to hate each other. That's not what we want. We must break them up, let them choose to assimilate, and then we can enjoy parts of their culture, they can enjoy parts of ours, but we still have something that unites us. That's our goal. And thus, that is how you should assimilate different demographics. Break them up, assimilate them piece by piece, allowing them to keep some of their policies, and then form a melting pot. Have a good one.